Hi everyone, my name is Leanne and today I'm going to be telling you all about my top 5 Irish authors. I've tried to put a real mix in here of type of writers, so if you are thinking about participating in the Irish Readathon, you've got a few ideas of authors that you may want to pick up. While this is a top 5, I don't think they're in any particular order. I'll leave all of the authors I mention listed down below, as well as maybe 1 or 2 of their books linked in the description box as well. I'll also leave all the information that you need for the Irish Readathon down there too. I'll link my announcement video. Basically, the long and short of it is, if you read 1 book by an Irish author in the month of March, you are participating in the Irish Readathon. It's a month-long readathon that's just focused on reading more Irish literature than you normally would. So anyways, let's just get into the writers. The first writer that I'm going to talk about is Oscar Wilde. Now, Oscar Wilde has a whole plethora of different kinds of work. He has written poetry and plays, he's written children's fiction, and his letters are fascinating. But he's probably most well known for the only novel that he ever wrote, The Picture of Dorian Gray. I read The Picture of Dorian Gray for the first time maybe when I was 18 or 19, and it was the first classic that I ever picked up, not for any sort of academic or study reasons. I picked up a couple of modern classics just for my own reading pleasure, but as far as proper classics go, The Picture of Dorian Gray was the first one I ever read by choice. And it's still a classic that I recommend to people who are a little bit reluctant to try out classics. This is a Victorian Gothic novel, and a lot of people know little bits about the plot before they go into it, that it's something to do with a man and a painting and he doesn't age. But there is so much more content and social analysis crammed in there. It's such an entertaining and funny novel. It is so readable, and I think if you are someone who does feel intimidated by classics, then Oscar Wilde is a great writer to go to. I would also really highly recommend his children's fiction. It's so strange, but it doesn't talk down to children. And obviously his plays are pretty well known as well, like The Importance of Being Earnest. And those are some short reads that would be really easy to add into your Irish Readathon TBR. As for my second author that I'm going to tell you guys about, of course I was going to include Louise O'Neill in this video. I adore everything Louise O'Neill writes. She has written 4 novels now, and there's quite a mix of different things in there. There is YA science fiction and YA fantasy. There is more general contemporary YA, but it deals with quite serious topics. And she also has contemporary adult fiction as well. The way Louise writes about womanhood is incredible, and I always think that she has this ability to see into a person's most intimate thoughts and then put them on the page. And while there is a real sense of Irishness about her writing, her stories are so universally applicable to women's experiences. Whenever I read one of Louise's books, I always have my little sticky tabs with me, because I know there are going to be so many things that I'm going to want to mark as being important or standout bits of dialogue. I'm pretty sure the first time that I read all of her novels, I devoured them in no more than 2 days. And one of her YA novels, Asking for It, is probably my favourite book of all time. The third writer I'm going to talk about is a poet. So I have chosen to talk to you guys about Seamus Heaney. Now, I have quite a long-standing relationship with Seamus Heaney's work. I studied him back in school and I studied him at university as well. I really enjoyed revisiting his work. When I studied it at university, there was a real sense of familiarity in me returning to it. Seamus Heaney is just such an incredible, touching and skilled poet. He writes a lot about the different kinds of love he has experienced in his life. He writes a lot about his childhood and what it's like to come from a rural farming community and then go on to be such a significant figure in the art world. He writes a lot about the political backdrop to his childhood. He grew up in Northern Ireland, and the political backdrop that he experienced growing up there and into his adult life plays a really significant role in his work. I think his poems work on a lot of levels as well. I think it's always very clear what he's talking about. So if you are someone who doesn't really like to overanalyze poetry, you can still get a lot from his writing, But equally, if you are someone who likes to get the pencil out and jot down notes and analyze things, then there is so much content for you to unpack there. I did a full video for the Irish Readathon last year when I went pretty in depth into his work, so I'll leave that down below if you want to check that out as well. The next author I'm going to mention is Sally Rooney. Now, I was somewhat reluctant to put her on this list because I've actually only read one of her books, Normal People, but it was my favourite read of 2018. I thought it was phenomenal, and I have so much confidence going into her other work that I'm going to adore it. I'm going to be reading Conversations with Friends alongside my co-host for the Irish Readathon, Aoife. I'm really looking forward to seeing what I think of Sally Rooney's first novel, and I'm also going to be reading a short story of hers called Mr. Salary. And as I said, I have so much confidence that I'm going to love these, and I love Normal People so much that I am going to include her on this list. Sally Rooney is so perceptive of the intricacies of intimate human relationships, friendships, romantic relationships. There is so much said with what her characters don't say to each other. Normal People didn't have a huge amount of plot to it, but it was such a fantastic character study of her two protagonists. Sally Rooney's powers of observation are just second to none. Normal People felt so contemporary as well. Like, there were things in that book that I recognised from my own experiences growing up that I'd never seen depicted in literature before. Like I said, even though I've only read one of her books, I'm already a massive fan. And the final author I'm going to talk about today in my list of my top 5 favourite Irish authors is Roddy Doyle. Roddy Doyle is an author who has been with me since my childhood. I don't know how many novels he has now, but like a lot. My first experience of Roddy Doyle was when I was in primary school and a student teacher read The Giggler Treatment aloud to us. It was so funny, like genuinely like laugh out loud funny. And I have revisited his kids' books as an adult reader, and they are still hilarious, and there are jokes in them that I get now as an adult that I didn't get when I was a kid, which is a fantastic joy. As a teenage and adult reader, I then went on to read some of his more grown-up fiction, like The Snapper and The Commitments. I remember reading those when I was a teenager and feeling very grown up about it, because I was like, oh, these are books for grown-ups. And while there were a lot of serious themes dealt with in his novels for grown-ups, there is still that real sense of humour carried throughout them. And I think that's a sense of humour that is very much unique to the north of Dublin, which is where I'm from, even though my accent doesn't really sound like I'm from the north of Dublin. But I think there's a real sense of humour there that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. North Dublin has so many like eclectic characters as well that I don't think you would find anywhere else in the world. And there are so many characters like that in Roddy Doyle's novels. Like what I spoke about with Louise O'Neill's novels, all of his books have a real sense of Irishness about them, but that doesn't mean the themes in them aren't universal and relatable to people across the globe. I've read quite a few of his novels now, but I have so many more that I still have to read. So I'm really looking forward to when I eventually get around to reading the rest of his back catalogue. I think he's a phenomenal writer. So that's it. They are all the authors I'm going to talk about today. I do have a question that I would love you guys to answer in the comments. Which author springs to mind when you think about Irish literature or Irish fiction? Is there anyone or any particular book that your mind goes straight to? I would find that fascinating. As I said, all the information you may need will be down below in the description, and if you have any questions about the Readathon, if you're looking for any further recommendations, do get in touch with me either in the comments or on my Instagram, which is always linked down below as well. I hope you guys are having a wonderful week, and I will talk to you in my next video.